title of my talk is called Pinching Gods. All right, because it means a few things and it conjures up some fun images. But we're going to start in Psalm 115. You need me to keep talking? All right. Okay, I'll start reading. So Psalm 115 and verse 1. Not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, but unto thy name give glory for thy mercy and for thy truth's sake. Wherefore should the heathen say, or my margin reference says, the Gentiles or nations, where is now their God? But our God is in the heavens. He hath done whatsoever he hath pleased. Their idols are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. They have mouths, but they speak not. Eyes have they not, but they see not. They have ears, but they hear not. Noses have they, but they smell not. They have hands, but they handle not. Feet have they, but they walk not. Neither speak they through their throat. They that make them are like unto them. So is everyone that trusteth in them. O Israel, trust thou in the Lord. He is their help and their shield. King David, I assume, doesn't specify who wrote the psalm, makes a distinction here between the gods of the heathen, or as it mentions, the Gentiles or the strangers or those who are outside of Israel and the other nations. But he mentions here how the God of Israel resides in the heavens, and he does whatever he wants. But the gods of the Gentiles or the nations, they're nothing. They look like a god. They don't smell like a god. But they're not a god. They don't do anything. They're just these images, these statues. But that's what they hold their hope in. That's what they trust in. And he says, anyone who does trust in them or manufactures them and puts their hopes in them, they are like them. They are lifeless and they are useless. Offense. Yes, offense. Now, while I was researching for the aforementioned presentation, I was intrigued by some things I found out about the Neo-Babylonian Empire. It was made famous by Nebuchadnezzar II, or Chad, through biblical accounts. We're familiar with Nebuchadnezzar appearing in the books of Daniel and in various prophets with Jeremiah and Ezekiel, and also through Chronicles. And isn't the rest of the works written in Kings, as they both say to each other? When you're trying to find something in Kings or Chronicles, it says, and isn't the rest of this information in the other book? And you go, well, I went to this one first. All right, anyway. But I found something interesting which I'd like to share with you tonight and try and bring out a particular point. Now, the funny thing is about when you try and look at the Neo-Babylonian Empire or the time of King Nebuchadnezzar and various of his other friends, history is particularly vague about the rulers because many empires wrote history for a political bias, or they changed it to make themselves look better or make their enemies look worse. And so generally, if you conquer another empire, you're going to write about what happened a bit different to what they think happened. So you get a lot of varying suggestions as to what happens. Luckily for us, we actually believe in what the Bible says, because a lot of the Bible timeline, a lot of secular history doesn't really believe in. Some archaeologists sort of go, no, that makes sense. It does actually fit in what we found elsewhere. But others go, well, we can't find any evidence in our other empires and their records, so we don't believe it. But as a result, we do know that Nebuchadnezzar existed, because when it talks about, in this year of his reign, he went and besieged Jerusalem, besieged Tyre, that information is recorded elsewhere in history. So we generally basically believe everything else that the Bible says about what happened, even though others disagree with that. So I just want to talk about the Babylonians. So I'm going to talk about the Neo-Babylonian Empire. That means the one that comes after the regular, vanilla Babylonian Empire. And they've been around for a long time. They generally used to use clay tablets or cylinders. They'd get the cylinder and they'd write things in cuneiform. And then I think what they would sometimes do, if they want a record of it, cover it in ink and then you roll it around on a parchment and then you get a copy of it. I assume they probably did that, I don't know. But that's how we sort of got our copies of it. We would find one, great, do that, roll it out. There you go, there's a nice thing, or photocopy it and give it to a museum. So there's various clay cylinders that the Babylonians used to record events and information, and there's particular ones that are for various kings. So we have the founder of the Neo-Babylonian Empire is Nabopolassar, he's my baby. And then it runs through to the last king, which is Nabonidus, and he's got his own one as well. And there's another one which was commissioned by Cyrus the Great, the Cyrus cylinder, and he said, "Write me a cylinder and tell everyone that I won and defeated you." And they went, "Okay." And he went, "I like it, let's keep it." All right, Daniel chapter 5. We're going to look at a few scriptures just while we're reading a little bit about history, just so you know I'm not just reading everything out of Wikipedia. Daniel chapter 5. So I'm going to pick up a few points, but also just some prophecy. I'm not going to go into the prophecy too much. Most of us are familiar with it, but it's good to be reminded about it. All right, only a few verses here. Daniel chapter 5 and verse 1. Belshazzar the king made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords and drank wine before the 1,000. Belshazzar, whilst he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father. It sort of implies that he's actually his grandfather, or the other people, as I mentioned in secular history, say he wasn't related to him at all. But whatever, we just say the Bible knows. It sort of refers to him as his forefather. Not that he had four of them, but he was before the others. They had taken out of the temple which is in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes, his wives and his concubines might drink therein. So we're familiar with this feast. Let's have a big party. Let's grab all the stuff that we stole from elsewhere because it's good quality and we'll drink out of it. We know what happens next, but we also know that it was a very bad idea. And desecrating the sacred items of God's temple. The writings on the wall for you, very literally, and in fact the origin of that saying. We're familiar that this is incredible fulfilling of prophecy against Babylon, and it's part of a chain of events in Judah's deliverance. We'll just pick it up in verse 25, and this is the writing that was written, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. This is the interpretation of the thing, Mene, God has numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting. Perez, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet and put a chain of gold about his neck and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom for the next 5 hours. In that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain, and Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old, or about medium age. So there's a couple of things to make note of here. Now we're familiar with this prophecy, but I just want to sort of bring in some more information about the Babylonians. Firstly, Belshazzar was actually a regent for his father Nabonidus, who was actually off capturing Tamar, Tyma, in North Arabia, and he was restoring and building temples all over the place to the moon god Sin. It's an apt name for a false god. He was actually Nabonidus' son, and he said, "I'm off to do king work, you stay here and look after the place." And Belshazzar said, "I'll do a great job," and then subsequently lost it to the Persians. The other thing is that Nabonidus knew that the Persians were gaining strength and popularity as an empire. They were sort of beginning their expansion and starting to get into Babylonian territory. And the threat of invasion loomed. And because the threat of invasion loomed, he did this. Now, this is an excerpt from the Babylonian Chronicles on the 17th year of the reign of Nabonidus. I read it the right way up. In the month of Abu, actually says that. Lugal-Marada and the other gods of the town Marad, Zabada, and the other gods of Kish, the goddess Ninlil, and the other gods of Kalama visited Babylon. Isn't that nice? All the gods went on a holiday and visited Babylon. Till the end of the month, Ululu, all the gods of Akkad, which is the Akkadian Empire, sort of an ancient name of Babylon, those from above and those from below entered Babylon. However, the gods of Borsippa, Kutha, and Sippar did not enter. They didn't get an invite. What that actually meant was, I started writing this out and then went, printing is a lot easier. Okay, what actually happened was, as the threat of a Persian invasion loomed, Nabonidus went to the surrounding towns of Babylon and he said, bring all your gods into Babylon and we'll look after them for you. All right? So we're going to start to piece these things together a bit here. The reason being is that they believe the gods were housed inside their statues from where they took care of their cities. So your city had a particular god or deity, and he was the one who looked after your city. And you had your priests who would look after it, make sure it worked, make sure it was turned on in the mornings, stop people from invading your city. So that's how they believed that they were protected. So Nabonidus made sure that the cultic personnel, the servants who were supposed to look after their gods, came with them into Babylon. Now there's two reasons for this. One, the more gods you have, the better protected, right? Get all your gods in, more shields turn on, or whatever they think happens, and it keeps all the baddies out. The second one is that if you have your people's gods, your people won't abandon you, because they very much believed that where their God was, that's where they were protected. And this is actually a long-standing tradition, as historian P.A. Bulio writes in 1993. One of the most powerful illustrations of the strength and conviction of image worship in ancient Mesopotamia is probably the treatment of cult statues in times of war. Assyrian and Babylonian sources of the first millennium frequently allude to the removal of divine statues from the temples as the result of a city being conquered. I'll have to skip a bit in here. There's a lot of reading. Statues were carried off to the land of victorious power. Assyria is in most known cases, where they remained in captivity until a turn of events would allow them to be restored to their shrines. Rather than incur the capture of their gods and the implications of such captures, in that the gods were abandoning the city, many would continue to have possession of them while in the face of an enemy. So if the enemy was coming in, you went, oh, let's move it just in case. The people would go, well, what are you taking our God for? Now we're definitely going to be attacked and overrun and destroyed. You've got to keep him here in the city so that the enemy doesn't get in. But when the enemy gets in, they go, ha, we got your God, and then they'll take it away anyway. So one or the other. During the months which preceded the invasion and conquest of Babylonia by the Persians in 539 BC, King Nabonidus ordered a massive gathering of the gods of Sumer and Akkad, which are the ancient names of those regions, into the capital. Unlike previous attempts, the gathering ordered by Nabonidus is documented by a number of historical and archival sources. So we know that this is something he definitely did. It didn't work. Isaiah 45. We know that we've just read the end of that chapter in which Babylon is conquered by the Medes and Persians. There's a fantastic prophecy. I definitely don't have time to go into it at all. But it's an amazing one, which we will look at how it was foretold a little bit. But we know that Babylon fell. It doesn't matter how many gods they had sitting in the city. And there were a lot of political reasons why Nabonidus was doing that and why people didn't like him for doing that, and I can't explain that now either because I've run out of time. But it was something that they used to do. Now, just in Isaiah 45 and verse 1, "Thus saith the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him, and I will loose the loins of kings, to open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut. I will go before thee and make the crooked places straight. I will break in pieces the gates of brass, and cut in sunder the bars of iron. And I will give thee the treasures of darkness and hidden riches of secret places, that thou mayest know that I, the Lord, which call thee by name, am the God of Israel. For Jacob, my servant's sake, and Israel, mine elect, I have even called thee by thy name. I have surnamed thee, though thou hast not known me. As mentioned, that this is part of an amazing prophecy about Cyrus the Great, written by Isaiah. And in fact, some historical records seem to say that when Cyrus was moving his campaign forward, this prophecy was given to him, was actually written and said, you should look at this. And he went, sounds pretty good, let's go. And when you look at various sources, a lot of people changed which god helped Cyrus. In fact, one of the Babylonian accounts, the Cyrus cylinder, there was a number of Babylonians who were supporting the Persians, and I'll mention why in a sec. But they sort of wrote, Marduk, our god, is the one that orchestrated this, and because Nabonidus was worshipping the wrong one, and we didn't like him anyway, and so our god, Marduk, is the one that let Cyrus into the city, and we all celebrated his entry and welcomed him with open arms. And Cyrus, went, yeah, okay, whatever, you write that. But the Bible account says, you're going to do what I want. Cyrus, I'm going to make sure that you're going to action my prophecy and it will be fulfilled in my way. Like I said, historical sources dispute which one actually happened. They can't find an accurate one. They're not sure which one because they all write different things, but we believe in the Bible account. Whether or not Cyrus fully believed in God, he certainly actioned God's plan. And to fulfill prophecy in a way that was quite amazing and incredible. Like I said, I haven't got time to go into it, but also in the timing. The timing was very important. So whether or not he believed in what he was doing, or whether he just went, well, this is part of my plan anyway, we know that God was manipulating it and orchestrating it to go the way to deliver Jacob, his servants, and Israel, mine elect. Okay. Right. One of the things about the Persian expansion policy was the aspect that they would roll up to a nation and say, hey, do you want to be part of the Persian Empire? It's got great benefits. And if they said no, then they go, okay, we'll take it anyway. But if they did, they would promise to do things like restore captured relics and items and peoples to their various places. Now, I suspect that the Lord put that idea in Cyrus's head because that was something that was very different to the empires before. The Babylonians and the Assyrians were very brutal in a lot of what they did, whereas the Persian Empire was sort of like the New Age guys, and they were very PC, and they would help you out, and you can come and join our army and be who you want to be in the Persian Empire. And it was very different, and it was very appealing to people. But as a result, it meant that, once again, the Lord fulfilled prophecy about Jerusalem being restored. We know that there's another wonderful prophecy there where all the items of Jerusalem were restored to Jerusalem, and the temple was rebuilt in the city and all of those things. That also meant that, as part of the Persian expansionist policy, it was a big benefit to the Babylonians because he said, well, I'll take all your statues and you can go and have them back. But now you're part of the Persian Empire. So he actually restored their gods, put them back in their cities, and the people loved him for it. So that was part of what they used to do. But we also know that the Lord quite probably put that in his head and was able to fulfill more prophecy as well. So that was a big benefit to countries who were going to be a satrap. If you want to know what a satrap is, come and talk to me later. All right. I just want to move backwards in time So that was the end of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. During the Neo-Babylonian Empire, we remember the names of Nabopolassar and Nebuchadnezzar. So these are just some, I found an intriguing document, which is translated from clay tablets, and it's called the Chronicles of the Chaldean Kings, and it's actually from the British Museum, and it's their records about what they used to do and a lot of the conquests, and it's where we get a lot of the information about the conquest of Tyre and the conquest of Jerusalem and the invasions into Judea. I'm just going to pick out a few pieces here. As in the past, the Assyrian army struck back, and when it entered the Assyro-Babylonian border town of Sazanaku on the 12th of Elul and set fire to the temples, this was warning enough to the Babylonians to make defensive preparations. 3 weeks later, the gods of Kish, which lay on the direct line of the march to Nippur, were removed for safety into Babylon. Invading army, they made the choice. Let's move our gods, bring them back to safety. The first recorded act of Nabopolassar was the restoration to Susa of the Elamite gods captured by the Assyrians during the campaign 642 to 693 BC. To return the statues was but a proper acknowledgement of help received from Elam, for it appears that when Nabopolassar captured Erech sometime before, in 626, the Elamites had taken its temple library to their country for safekeeping. So as a goodwill, they returned some previously captured gods back to these people, and they were very happy about that. A month later, the Assyrian army had penetrated further south, and on the 21st of Laya, that's what it says, entered and plundered the city of Salat, which lay on the Euphrates upstream from Sippar. On the previous day, the gods of Sippar had been brought into Babylon, which itself expected to be attacked in due course. And a couple more. In the month of Kislev, Nebuchadnezzar II, caught up his army and marched to Syria. And from one of the cities under his control, Hamath, Riblah, or possibly Kadesh, he sent raiding parties into the adjacent desert, so collecting much spoil from the Arab tribes. By removing their protective deities, he sought to keep a hold of these nomads, much as the Assyrian kings had done earlier in the same area. Sargon, Sennacherib, and Esarhaddon had all used their capture of the gods of the Arabs to bargain for more effective control over the desert tribesmen who constantly harassed the western Assyrian provinces. And last one, this would agree with Babylonian chronicles, which describe how Tiglath-Pileser III, one of my favorite names, carried off the gods of Sapazu during his campaign of 745 BC when he plundered the Hamrim district. So, I just wanted to give you some historical reference to what I'm sort of talking about. It was common practice to gain control of nations by holding hostage their beliefs. You capture a god, you've got control of the people. So they had these skirmishes where these Arabian nations would come and attack their borders, and they went, well, if you go and grab their gods, then you'll have power over them. You'll have control. They won't attack you because you've got them as hostage. All right, Genesis 31. So as mentioned before, the Mesopotamian civilizations, the Assyrians and the Babylonians, this was common practice and something that they used to do in wartime. Genesis chapter 31. Oh, I've got to hurry up. Verse 13. We're right in the middle of Jacob and Laban. If you're not familiar with the story, Jacob was sent to go and find a wife. And he was sent to the land of his forebears, or forefathers, or his bear fathers, however many there were. And he comes across Laban, and he sees one of his daughters and says, she's pretty good, can I have her? Sure, just work for me for 7 years and then you can marry her. Great, what a deal. And then after 7 years, when they were married, the veil came off and he went, you're his sister. And Laban went, psych, you can work for another 7 years and get the right wife. He actually got the right wife fairly soon, but he still had to work another 7 years. So 14 years down the track, he's had enough. And he's been ripped off a lot. Laban's changed his wages 10 times. He hasn't really got any property. He's tried to work his way to gathering cattle and sheep, which are things that they actually needed. And in the end, the Lord says to him, verse 13, I'm the God of Bethel, where thou anointest the pillar, and where thou vowedest a vow unto me. Now arise, get thee out from this land, and return unto the land of thy kindred. And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, he's mentioning what he had heard from God to his wives. And Rachel and Leah answered and said unto him, Is there yet any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house? Are we not counted of him strangers? For he hath sold us, and hath quite devoured also our money. For all the riches which God hath taken from our father, that is ours and our children's. Now then, whatsoever God hath said unto thee, do. So what had happened was, can I marry your daughter? Sure, pay me a whole bunch of money, because now I don't get to use her services in my household. There you go, here's your money. And so he's spent all that money. So his daughters are saying, well, he doesn't care about us anymore anyway. I don't know why we're still here. If your God is saying let's go, then let's go, let's do that. So Jacob was quite happy with that. Then Jacob rose up and set his sons and his wives upon camels, and he carried away all his cattle and all his goods which he had gotten, the cattle of his getting which he had gotten in Pandanaram, for to go to Isaac his father in the land of Canaan. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. And Jacob stole away unawares to Laban the Syrian, in that he told him not that he had fled. Generally, if you're running away from someone, you don't give him a heads up. Hey Laban, I'm leaving with all your stuff. See ya. I find this very interesting, and we're just going to explore a little bit more. Verse 19. Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. Verse 19, in my margin references the household idols. Laban was a pagan Laban. He wasn't of God. He wasn't one of the children of Israel. He was part of the Mesopotamian kingdoms that believed in these false gods. So they run away. Laban finds out, he's very angry, and he chases after them. Verse 25, it says, Then Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mount, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mount of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, What hast thou done, that thou hast stolen away unawares to me, and carried away my daughters, as captives taken with the sword? Wherefore didst thou flee away secretly, and steal away from me, and didst not tell me that you were stealing things from me? You should do that I might have sent thee away with mirth and with songs, with tabret and with harp. He's upset. He's saying, you disappeared. You just left. We could have had a big party. We could have had a big celebration. I could have hugged my children, hugged my grandchildren, and sent you on your way. But you just ran away. I never saw this coming, even though I ripped you off for 14 years and changed your wages 10 times and didn't give you anything. And hast not suffered me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Thou hast now done foolishly in so doing. It is in the power of my hand to do you hurt, but the God of your father spake unto me yesternight, saying, Take thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. And now, though thou wouldst needs be gone, because thou sore longest after thy father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my gods? I understand that you want to leave and want to take everything and off you go and go back to your family's country, but why did you steal my gods? I need them. He's really upset about this, and I really don't have time, but we'll just read verse 31-32. Jacob answered and said unto Laban, Because I was afraid, for I said, Peradventure thou wouldst take by force thy daughters from me. With whomsoever thou findest thy gods, let him not live before our brethren. Discern thou what is thine with me, and take it with thee. For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. So there's this thing here says, well, if I take your gods, then I have control over you, and you're not going to hurt me, even though he didn't know that they'd been stolen. Rachel had actually done it. She actually is sitting on a camel, and she's got him in her saddlebag, And she says, I'm not getting up from the camel. You can't make me. And Laban, he furiously searches through all their stuff. Where are they? Where are my gods? I can't find them anywhere. You must have them. Because he said, Jacob said, well, whoever's got them, you can kill them. Well, she had them, so you can't kill him because she's a she. No. But verse 36, and Jacob was wroth and chode with Laban, as you do. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, what is my trespass? What is my sin that thou hast so hotly pursued after me? Whereas thou hast searched all my stuff, what hast thou found of all thy household stuff? Set it before my brethren and thy brethren, that they may judge betwixt us both. So what we have here is this situation where Rachel is aware of the importance of these idols to her father. And she knows in her head, if I take them with me, then we have control over the situation, because I know what he believes. Now, Jacob didn't know anything about that. But this is what unfolds. And in the end, so I don't really know what she believed, but we obviously know that later she believes in God and follows the God of Israel, because Israel is Jacob. But she also has knowledge of how the gods affect her father. So they sort this all out. I've got to skip a bunch. Basically, down in verse 46, in the end, Laban says, all right, let's make an agreement. We'll make a pillar. We'll put some stones together, and it will be a marker to say, I'm not going to go and chase you any further past this point. But says, make a covenant that will be a witness. And Jacob took a stone and set it up for a pillar. Verse 46, and Jacob said unto his brethren, gather stones, and they took the stones and made a heap. 47, and Laban called it Jegar Sahadutha. Jacob called it Gilead, because it's much easier to say. And Laban said, this heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore was the name of it called Gilead and Mizpah. For he said, the Lord watch between me and thee when we are absent one from the other. And if thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives beside my daughters, no man is with us. See, God is witness betwixt me and thee. And Laban said to Jacob, behold this heap, and behold this pillar, which I have cast betwixt me and thee. This heap be a witness, and this pillar be a witness, and I will not, he says, I'm not going to chase after you. But verse 53, the God of Abraham, the God of Nahor, which is Laban's father and Abraham's brother, the God of their father, judge betwixt us, and Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac. The fear is the respect of God. And he goes, Laban, I don't know what you believe, but I know that you acknowledge my God. I know that whatever gods you believe in, that you see that I believe and I follow my God. And my trust and my hope is in him. And Laban says, well, whatever you do, if no one's here to see it, I know at least your God will see it. And you will respect that. And you will see that and you will follow that. He said, let it be a reminder. All right. Okay. All right. Sorry, I'm just chopping and changing. This event took place around 1704 BC, roughly. When you look at people who look at Bible timelines, they go, it's about then. And it was in the land of the Chaldees. Nabonidus, King Nabonidus, the last king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, is known as the first archaeologist because he excavated and restored temples to ancient Babylonian gods. He used to find the temples that had been destroyed and collapsed and buried over, and he would try and find them again to restore faith in the gods of his own nation. These are the same people doing the same thing for over 1,000 years. Nabonidus is, when he was doing all that, when Babylon fell, it was about 539 BC. This is the same land, the same people, the Chaldees. Abraham was from those people. Where are the Chaldees? God said, you over there, come out of that land, come and be my people. I'm going to make you a people. Now we know that if you trace Abraham's heritage back even further, it goes back to Noah, So it's the same people that God has said, I want you to follow me, but every time I turn my back, not that I turn my back, but you know what I mean. Every time I look over there, you've found gods again. You've put them in your hands and you've put them in your houses and you said, I can see them. This is what's going to keep me safe. And he's been trying to pry them away from that for over 1,000 years. Just say, put them down. They're not important. They don't work the same. But God persisted. I was going to go into 1 Samuel, but I think I'll just give you the summation of that. You can go to 2 Chronicles, where we'll finish. There's a fantastic story of the Philistines, who were of different origin. Some people sort of think they're more of an offshoot of the Egyptians, but they gave the Israelites a lot of trouble in Canaan. And there's a particular incidents where before they had kings, where they had judges, and the last lot of judges, they were no good. They had high priests, and those high priests were very corrupt. And but what was happening is that the Philistines were attacking a lot, and the Israelites, they were being very disobedient at this time, which is why there's Eli, and then there's Samuel, and then Samuel then anoints Saul. So around that time, Eli's sons, they were very bad high priests, corrupting a lot of the people. And as a result, Israel was losing to the Philistines. They were losing their battles. And they said, let's go and get our God, the Ark of the Covenant, and take it to war, and we will win. And that disobedience resulted in the loss of the Ark of the Covenant and the death of the corrupt high priests. And funny story, but Eli, it talks about him sitting and he's trembling with anxiety because he's heard that the Ark of the Covenant had gone to the battle that they'd lost. And the people came in and they said, Eli, your sons are dead. And he goes, and? Oh, and the Ark of the Covenant's been captured. And he falls over and breaks his neck and dies. Because that's what he was worried about. He was worried about, our God that is in the box. And we took it to war and it was supposed to win. But then it lost, and now we've lost our God. What are we going to do now? And the Philistines went, we've got your God. No. Let's go and put it over here with the rest of our gods. And Dagon was so excited he fell flat on his face. He was so excited he did it twice. And, that's because God said, I'm not in the box. And by the way, everyone gets emeralds and mice. And the Philistines said, we don't want your God anymore. It's bad news. Please take it back. But that was the point of that, is God saying, you just can't take the Ark of the Covenant and expect to win. I'm not in the box. I'm not like all your other gods. You can't just take me and hope it's going to work out. The enemy is going to capture it. It doesn't matter. I'm not in the box. That's not where I live. I'm in heaven and I will do whatever I want. And you, Israel, need to remember that. And it was weird for them because King David, when he said, the ark is returning, we know the story, he gets it wrong and he does it the wrong way. It's like, well, if you're not in the box, then why do you care about the box? If we put it on the wrong cart, then we're getting killed. Like, what's the deal? Are you in the box or you're not in the box? And God just says, you still have to have respect for what I've put in place. You can't do whatever you want with it. You have respect for what I've put in place, but know where I am in your life. All right, 2 Corinthians chapter 6. Thanks to Dave for suggesting this one. Verse 14. Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness? And what concord hath Christ with Belial? Or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? And what agreement hath the temple of God with idols? For you are the temple of the living God, as God has said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Wherefore come out from among them and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you. and will be a father unto you, and you shall be my sons and daughters, saith the Lord Almighty. God continues to delineate from the gods of this world. People want to hold their hope and trust in their hands. Whether it's a God that they manufactured in their minds and they said, this represents an external power that will make my life be better. Or whether they just say, I want to have control over my own future and my own fortune, and I will make my life what it will be. Their minds are linked to that material thing, and they feel lost when it's taken away. You look at people's lives and they go, this is the empire that I've built up. This is where my power is held. And when someone takes that away, their life is lost. They can't do anything. Someone has captured my God. I can't do anything with my life because it's over there. My God is over there and I can't get it back. I need some benefactor to deliver it and bring it back to me so I can be happy again. And that's what people's lives are like. Whether they acknowledge it in one form or another, their hope is linked to this world with what they can see, what they can hold on to. And God doesn't want us to be like that. He wants us to know that his dwelling place is in us. So who's going to capture you? I'm still going to be with you. It doesn't matter where you go. I'm with you, but also I'm in heaven doing whatever I want. Don't feel like your life is contained in the things you can touch and the things that you can manipulate, and that they're at risk of people taking away your hope of salvation. He says it's not the same. It's all out there. It's all above, and that's where I live. So I guess to really bring it back to this thread of what's been happening is that Rachel was stealing her father's gods because she knew that's how it worked. And God was saying, can you please just put them away? Just stop it. You don't need them. That's what everyone else thinks you need to do. But when you show people that their gods have no life, that they don't do anything, that they are useless, you can say, come and see my God. Come and see the power that I believe in, that's not tied to anything on this earth, and it is beyond, and hopefully that they'll see that. And I guess as we're talking about witnessing, we might be doing that in various aspects. That as people fall apart and see that the things that they've invested in this world have been taken away or have collapsed or they're in monetary ruin, we can say, God is not in those things. And you can have a life beyond that. Would you like to meet the real God? What people say.